Battlefield might be going annual. Yes, you heard that right. According to industry analysts, EA is reportedly planning to put 3 different studios on the Battlefield franchise, each taking a 3-year cycle so that a new Battlefield game can launch every year. Basically just copying what Activision has been doing for Call of Duty for over a decade. One studio ships a game while the other 2 are working on the next sequel for the following year. Now on paper that sounds like a recipe for easy money, but I don't think EA understands the Battlefield fanbase as much as they think they do. It would be terrible for them if they assume this fanbase is the same as Call of Duty's fanbase. So annual games, does this mean higher quality games with less crunch? Or is EA just trying to squeeze the franchise dry? Will this actually work the way they think it will? Or is Battlefield about to walk the same path as Call of Duty, where innovation slows down and burnout kicks in? Today we're going to dive deep into this strategy, and I'll break down the pros and cons, compare it directly to Call of Duty's model, and ultimately answer the question, is this a good idea or a good move for Battlefield, or the beginning of the end? Alright, before we talk about pros and cons, let's set the stage. Industry analyst Michael Pachter recently revealed that EA has a plan for Battlefield's future.
You know, I talked to EA, Byron Beebe, good dude, former Activision guy, worked at Infinity Ward with Vince, and he's running the Battlefield franchise, and their goal is 3 studios making Battlefield on a 3-year basis so they can get to Battlefield annually.
The idea is to get the franchise into an annual release schedule. Instead of one studio carrying all the weight like DICE has for decades, the responsibility would be spread across 3 different studios. Each studio would get roughly 3 years to work on their game, but because they're staggered, the end result is a brand new Battlefield title every single year. It's worth noting that this won't happen overnight. Analysts say it could take 5 to 6 years before EA can actually lock down that yearly cadence. Right now, the next Battlefield is still in development, but EA is laying down the foundation for the long haul. And here's the key context. EA isn't just thinking of Battlefield as a game anymore. They're thinking of it as a platform. That means long-term live service elements, ongoing monetization, and an ecosystem where players stick around between releases, hopefully. This isn't just about selling $70 copies every year. This is about making Battlefield into something closer to Call of Duty with Warzone, something always active, always earning, always pushing players forward. That's the strategy, but whether or not that's a good idea, that's what we're here to figure out. Alright, let's talk about the potentially good parts of this decision for players. Because while an annual Battlefield might sound like a corporate move, there actually are some potential upsides for us as gamers. Pro number 1, you get more content more often. The biggest upside of an annual release is simple. You don't have to wait 5 or 6 years for the next big Battlefield. If you weren't feeling one entry, you won't be stuck with it for a half a decade. Battlefield 2042, I'm looking at you. Another release is just around the corner, bringing new maps, new modes, new weapons, and hopefully new ideas. For players who just want fresh content to dig into, this is a big win. Pro number 2, more variety across the franchise. With multiple studios working on Battlefield, we might see different creative visions. One studio might lean into modern warfare, another might try a historical setting, while another could experiment with near future tech. That means players could get a wider variety of Battlefield experiences instead of every game feeling the same. If you didn't vibe with one direction, you might click with the next. Pro number 3, bigger and better live support. Annual releases create a stronger ecosystem. Imagine consistent updates, seasonal content, and a shared progression system across games. That means your time invested in one Battlefield doesn't just vanish when the next one drops, it carries over in a meaningful way. Maybe more support, more content, and a community that doesn't feel abandoned. Again, big maybe. It really depends on how they're going to go forward with this. Pro number 4, potentially smoother launches. Now this one's a big if. But if the studios actually coordinate well, a 3-year dev cycle could mean fewer rushed games. Players benefit when devs aren't crunched to death, because that usually leads to more polished launches. And after Battlefield 2042's rough start, smoother day one experiences are something that the community definitely deserves. And finally, a stronger, more consistent community. Right now, Battlefield's community spikes at launch and then dwindles while everyone waits years for the next release. An annual cycle could keep the player base more active and engaged year-round, which means fuller servers, more matchmaking options, and healthier lobbies. So yeah, from the player perspective, there are some perks. The question is whether EA will actually deliver on these promises or just crank out half-baked games to meet a schedule. Now, for the fun part, the cons, and trust me, there are plenty. First off, franchise burnout. We've seen this before. Call of Duty, Assassin's Creed, even Guitar Hero back in the day. When you release a new game every year, fatigue sets in. Fans stop feeling excited and the franchise starts to feel like a treadmill. Even if the game is decent, it's hard to make them feel fresh when they're coming out like clockwork. Secondly, dilution of quality. Battlefield has always thrived on scale and innovation. Huge maps, destruction systems, combined arms warfare, these things take time to perfect. By locking the franchise into an annual cycle, EA risks cutting corners. So yes, 3 years sound decent, but when you have to ship something every year, the pressure to hit deadlines can lead to rushed features, buggy launches, or half-baked ideas. Con number 3, development burnout is still possible. Sure, having multiple studios helps, but coordinating across 3 separate teams is not easy. Different company cultures, different design philosophies, different tools, it's a logistical nightmare. We've already seen reports of tension between EA's various studios, and throwing them into a forced yearly rotation might make things worse, not better. And let's be honest, how many innovative ideas can you really come up with for a war shooter game? The stress and pressure to come up with new ideas to continuously bring players back every year would be overwhelming, even with 3 years to bust out the next game. It gets worse when you do start coming up with ideas, but the studio before yours already has it in their game, so there goes your innovative idea. So hopefully you can think of a next one. Con number 4, monetization overload. Let's not pretend this isn't part of the plan. Battlefield moving to annual releases means more opportunities for microtransactions, cosmetics, and live service hooks. And while players tolerate this in games like Call of Duty or Apex Legends, there's always going to be a risk of going too far. If Battlefield turns into nothing but a monetization platform, players will notice, and they'll start pushing back. And finally, last con, the loss of long-term support. This is a big one that fans hate about Call of Duty. Even when a game is good, it gets dropped the second the next one comes out. Support dries up, patches slow down, and the community splinters across multiple titles. Battlefield has already struggled with this. Look how quickly 2042 was abandoned at launch. An annual cycle can make that problem even worse. And the scary part, Battlefield isn't exactly on stable ground right now. Call of Duty has the numbers to absorb a bad year. Battlefield doesn't. If one annual release completely flops, it could damage the franchise's reputation beyond repair. While the pros sound great for players, like more content, variety, and support, the cons are just as bad, and maybe even more damaging in the long run. So let's talk Call of Duty, because that's clearly the blueprint EA is following. Call of Duty perfected the annual release model by rotating between their 3 main studios, Infinity Ward, Treyarch, and Sledgehammer. Each team gets about 3 years to make their game, while Activision reaps the rewards of yearly releases. And financially, it's working. Call of Duty is a juggernaut. It sells tens of millions of copies every year, dominates streaming platforms, and with Warzone, it becomes a free-to-play powerhouse as well. But here's the catch. Players have been complaining about Call of Duty for years. A lot of players feel the games are too samey, too rushed, and too monetized. Every year, the cycle repeats. Hype at launch, frustration after a few months, and then abandonment as the next entry looms. The community rarely feels stable, and that's the real danger for Battlefield. Unlike Call of Duty, which can afford to coast on sheer popularity, Battlefield doesn't have the same cushion. Its last few entries, Battlefield 5 and 2042, were very rough launches that hurt fan trust. If Battlefield goes annual and delivers even one bad game, it won't just be a minor stumble, it could tank their whole plan. So yes, Call of Duty proves that the model can work financially, but it also shows the pitfalls of prioritizing quantity over quality. And EA needs to be very careful which lessons they choose to copy. So, is this a good idea? Honestly, maybe. For players, the upside is pretty clear. More frequent content, more variety between entries, smoother launches if the system works, and a healthier community that doesn't have to wait years between games. On paper, that sounds great, especially if you've been frustrated by the long gaps between recent Battlefields. But here's the flip side. Those benefits only matter if EA and the studios deliver. An annual release schedule can just as easily backfire. If the games feel rushed, if monetization starts taking priority over fun, or if player support gets abandoned the second a new game drops, then all those pros suddenly turn into cons. The truth is, Battlefield is not Call of Duty. Call of Duty can survive a weak year because it has sheer numbers on its side. Battlefield doesn't have that luxury. If even one release in the cycle completely flops, it could damage player trust beyond repair. So my final take, from a gamer's perspective, this could go one of two ways. If EA respects players' time, supports each game properly, and actually uses the extra studios to bring variety and polish, then yeah, annual Battlefield could be exciting and maybe even revitalize the franchise. But if they cut corners, chase trends, and treat Battlefield as nothing more than a cash cow, then all the potential player benefits vanish and we'll be stuck with a series that feels more disposable than ever. In short, this move could give us the best Battlefield era yet, or it could kill the franchise for good. It will all depend on their execution. Either way, it shows how much the gaming industry leans on formulas that are supposed to guarantee success, but don't always deliver. And speaking of formulas, this isn't just a shooter problem. Even in completely different genres like turn-based RPGs, developers face similar struggles. I made a video diving into why the turn-based RPGs still face bias, so if you want to see how these industry patterns affect other genres and not just shooters, go check out that video. Trust me, it's a fascinating look at how games are judged before they even get a fair shot. Like, comment, subscribe. My name is Minsuka. I'll see y'all in the next one. See ya.